Over the last couple of months, we've talked a lot about change, about learning from your mistakes, and from sharing your story, being an example for yourself. I made a major change, as you can tell, and I'm challenging you to do the same. Now it's your turn to tell your story, to get out of your comfort zone and ask questions of me and how we can have conversations, not just on the podcast here, but on the social media as well. So I want to know from you. I want to hear from you. I want to see and hear your challenges, your changes, your stories where there are lessons learned. And I want you to suggest conversations we can have on the future episodes of the Saturday Morning Hustle. We're going to get in that today because it is Saturday. We're in the office. We hustle on Saturday. The next big thing does not happen 9 to 5. And that next level is not Monday through Friday. You got to come in the office and earn it on the weekend. So again, we're going to review, have some conversations about what we've been talking about recently, about change, about learning from your mistakes, and about telling your story. Ultimately, that's going to lead all of us, myself and you, to getting out of our comfort zone and being ready to embrace the idea of we can do better and moving past previous less than desirable outcomes, etc., in order to improve ourselves. It's the human condition, but it's also a business condition as well. So if you'll remember, just a couple of weeks ago, the title of the Saturday Morning Hustle was Embrace Change. And again, in that one, I embraced change specifically. I literally did the intro, went and got my haircut, come back and finished the conversation about embracing change. Make sure and review that one if you have not listened or watched it on YouTube. 723, we talked about consistent change, the need for consistent growth, improvement, and change. We talked about on 716 how age, perspective, experience, and empathy changes your perspective of how the world could be, should be, both internally and externally. 625, the long lessons and continual learning as a continual change process. But we also talked a lot too in several past episodes about learning from your mistakes. On 6 and 9, we talked about, I gave you some funny stories of missed opportunities, some clients I didn't get, some clients I lost, etc., with some humorous stories, learning my lessons from those mistakes. 528, I asked you on social media things you wanted me to answer. I answered those questions specifically about podcasting. Should you be podcasting or not? And again, giving you lessons that I have learned in my process as a podcaster. And so now it is time to take those two ideas about learning our lessons from our past mistakes, about changing, improving, always doing better, see how they go together, learn your lessons from previous issues, and then change or improve and grow better, adjust. Now I want to hear your story. I want some conversation for you. The Saturday Morning Hustle is a lot of me talking to you, but I want to hear back from you about some lessons that you've learned in life. Tell me the story, especially if it's entertaining, especially if it's funny or odd in some way that maybe people wouldn't think of as a way that you learned a lesson. And ask questions of me of things you want to hear on this podcast. I've done this a few times, ask you for the topics. And so we've specifically been having conversations on this podcast. Listening to the Past was an episode that we did. And then very recently, just last week, I featured a different podcast, the Defining Moments podcast, where I was a guest. I was the interviewee, wasn't the interviewer. I was being interviewed. I had an hour-long conversation about my history, about how I grew up, about previous work, positive and negative, lessons I've learned, how to deal with negativity, how to deal with stress, how to deal with clients who don't see things the right way, the same way that you do, etc. I'd still recommend you guys check out the Defining Moments podcast. You can find it on YouTube and on great podcast platforms as well, because that hour-long interview, I got to tell my story. So that dovetails again into what we're talking about today, about telling your story. So the things that we need to have a conversation about today before I challenge you to do the same thing: embracing change, learning lessons from mistake. And then when you share your story, whether it's something we do on social media, whether you send me an email, whether you make your own podcast episode and tag myself, the Saturday Morning Hustle, or anyone else, when you share your story, when you show how you learned lessons from things that worked out differently than you expected, whether it's positive, negative, or otherwise, you can become an example for other people as well. So you can learn lessons. You can also provide the opportunity for other people to learn lessons from your situations, from your stories, from your background, from the thing that worked out or didn't work out or was unexpected. Maybe they can relate that to something in their life. And at the very least, they can look to their own experiences and find that silver lining and those little golden nuggets in the situations that they have in their past as well. So be an example for others. You do that by getting outside your comfort zone. That's the thrust of the conversation we're about to have for the rest of this podcast episode. Is you can't do any of this. You can't grow and change. You can't learn lessons from previous experiences, and you can't share and become an example for anyone else if you're not willing to push yourself out of the comfort zone. I don't have to give you all the cliche conversations about how your best work happens outside the comfort zone. Nothing great happens when you stay in your comfort zone, etc. You know all of this. So let's go deeper into that conversation, because I was asked last week when I was on the Defining Moments podcast, and then they tweeted out the last time I had put out on Twitter and on social media topics for the Saturday Morning Hustle. They asked specifically these questions. When was the last time you were challenged with doing something outside your comfort zone? What was it? What was your mindset like, and how did you feel after? So I'm going to give you an example myself, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us your story. Give us examples. Again, hit us up on social media. Make your own podcast episode. Make a YouTube video. However you want to have that conversation, but tell your story and give an example. So the question was, when was the last time you challenged yourself? Not that you were challenged, that you challenged yourself with doing something outside your comfort zone. Now, the easy thing I could tell you is I just had this big haircut. I had grown my hair out and had it there for many years, and it become part of my personality, part of my self-brand, if you will. And so it'd be easy to tell you that I challenged myself by cutting the long hair off, going to short hair, and continuing on in a new version, a 2022, mid to late 2022 version, if you will, of myself, and how I will make those adjustments to my self-brand. That's too easy of the conversation today. I think I would like to go a little bit deeper. The last time I challenged myself, I can tell you that the last couple of years, because of my age, I had one of those big birthdays, the ones that ends in a 0, and a birthday that often people associate with being what they may call over the hill or old or something of that nature. Of course, I don't have that attitude about it, so I'm not worried about that at all. There are things that come with different level ages. Older you are, the different things that have to come with physicality, with medical, with the way you sleep, with the way you eat, with the way your metabolism works, the way that your body reacts to things, whether it is utilizing a standing desk, having the right diet, or coming off the wrong diet, your consumption of sugary drinks or alcohol or things of that nature. And it's not massive changes. It would be if you woke up one day and you had developed something on your face, or your hands were swollen, or you had pain somewhere in your body, and you realized it came from a decision you'd made the day before about how you slept, the position you slept in, or food you had eaten, or something you drank, or not drinking enough water, whatever it is. If something was very obvious, you would just change it. If you woke up in the morning and you were dehydrated, you would be very purposeful about drinking more water that day. Then at the end of the day, you would compare and say, yes, I feel better when I drink more water, and now I need to make that a routine and habit. And I bring that up because I'm not really good at drinking water. I don't drink enough water myself. I have my water cup right here just in case I get dry mouth during this conversation, but I don't drink enough water for what people would consider healthy. I don't work out as often as I would like, and on a consistent basis as I was like. I could make it easy for you and tell you that it's because my work schedule, because I travel, because I'm not always in control of when I'm doing things at what time and at what place, and even what city I'm in, etc. But I'm not going to make that excuse. I can do better with that. Something I'm looking forward to more as we get into the less hot weather, the cooler weather. We get into the holiday seasons. Third and fourth quarter is the busiest time for my business, but first quarter is the easiest time for my business. But I can't wait till January to do better with my eating, with my health, with my gym routine, with drinking water, etc. Because I am getting older. We're all getting older every single day. And again, I don't feel old, but I do know that my body, my physicality, which also can affect your mental status as well, does react differently to things like sleep or the lack thereof, of about doing something that injures you or aggravates an injury, not eating correctly, overindulging in things you're not supposed to, etc., whether it's sweets, alcohol, etc. So I have been challenging myself to do better in that regard because it is a full aspect of my life. And again, challenge for myself, not something I think is too illustrative for this conversation. So I'm going to give you an even better illustration for this conversation. I have recently agreed to do a 3-hour presentation about strategic planning for a group of CEOs and business owners, top level business professionals. The time I said yes, I thought it would be great. I've done similar presentations before. I do public speaking a lot. Obviously, I come in here every Saturday and talk to you on the Starting One Hustle. I also have regular conversations with my business partner, Rich Pritchard, on the Golden Group Strategic Growth Podcast. I do a lot of public presentations. Strategic planning is the wheelhouse of what I do on a regular basis for the 9 to 5, the main job I have, Golden Group. But a 3-hour presentation at the highest level with people who already really have a good grasp of the conversation, of the subject matter, who are expecting not just basics, but expert level for 3 hours. I now realize that I've said yes, this is a major task. This is outside my normal comfort zone. I could tell you I could do 30 minutes on this subject with zero prep, someone pointing right at me and saying, talk for 30 minutes about strategic planning. I could do that. I could probably fill an hour in a very beneficial way in the same topic, doing a structured 3 hours at the highest level with a very well-informed audience is a different animal. This is happening in less than 30 days. So this is something that I'm challenging myself on. So the last time I challenged myself was saying yes to a top level, 5,000 level, 3-hour strategic planning process. I'm outside my comfort zone because of the amount of time, because of the subject matter expertise necessary and the preparation that goes into it too. To be honest with you, when it comes to public speaking, I would much rather make myself 3 or 4 bullet points, have 1 or 2 slides for the audience to look at while I'm talking, and speak extemporaneously off the top of my head like I'm doing with you on this podcast right now. I have very few notes in front of me for this conversation outside of some specifics, some of the episodes I mentioned earlier, about the only things I put into my podcast. So doing this in a different way, much more structured, much more formal, more slides, handouts, etc. And again, for experts, not for people who need and would be listening to everything I say as something they've never heard before, but most of them are going to know 90% of what I can present to them. I need to give them that last 10% for a 3-hour period. You can see that is challenging myself, pushing myself out of the comfort zone. So that's what it is. What is your mindset like? I'm actually 50-50. I'm very excited about it, but I'm also a little bit anxious about it. Not afraid of it, not worried about it, but anxious about it because I know I can do a good job. I want to do a great job. I want to be really great at this one. And I think there's potential. I mentioned on this podcast before a few times to other people, various people in my life for various reasons. And the irony is most of them don't know each other, have mentioned that I should write a book, that I should take my podcast experience, the things I talk about you on the Starting One Hustle, the things I do in my business for the Golden Group, some of the public speaking that I've done previously, and put all of this information together in a book format, which is a challenge because I've never written a book. I've never done a project of that size. I know there's a lot of ways to do a book poorly. And again, if I would do a book, I would want to do it well, expertly, top level if I could. So I'm rolling that into my thought process too. So I'm feeling anxious about being able to do this well, to collect this much information, have this much depth in my presentation, because I think if I can do that, then the idea that I could write a book on the subject makes more sense. If I couldn't do the 3-hour presentation, then maybe the book is unrealistic. So that is the mindset going into it. That's how it's making me feel. So those are the examples that I want you to use as well. I want you, again, you can put it on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. You can make a video and send it directly to me. You can make a video and put it on YouTube. You can record your own podcast episode. If you got a podcast, you can record it. Just record something on your phone and email it directly to me. I'm easy to find, and everything, all the information is at startingonehustle.com. But let's hear your stories. Let's hear your story of a lesson you have learned, an unexpected outcome that made you see things differently, that changed your perspective, your mindset. That's one thing you can tell us. The second thing you can tell us is the type of things you would like to hear in this podcast, the lessons that you would like to learn. Maybe you want to hear from me, topics, subject matters. You have a question you want me to answer, etc. Express those as well. Or if you want to give an example of when was the last time you challenged yourself to do something outside your comfort zone? What was it? What was your mindset like, and how did it make you feel? If you can answer those questions, again, as short or as extensive as you would like, we will then play the clips, play the videos, link to it, demonstrate, read it back here on the podcast, and then have a conversation about it with you so that we're in a collaborative two-way conversation. Not just always me telling you about stuff that happened to me, but you telling all of us about examples that happened to you so that we can all learn from that, so that you can push yourself outside of your comfort zone, so that you can be an example for others. So you just don't learn lessons, but other people learn lessons as well. Then you're influencing others. You're being an influencer. You're being a mentor. You're being a collaborator. That's what it's all about here on the podcast. That's what I'm trying to get you to do with this particular challenge. So shout out to Defining Moments Podcast, Undefeated Bro, Long Lamb for asking those questions on Twitter. And of course, then following up by inviting me on his podcast just a couple weeks ago to have a full over an hour conversation about where I come from and how I got to where I'm at today. So again, check that out if you are so interested. There you go, folks. Thank you again for tuning in, listening, and taking this challenge. I want you to take on this challenge in some way. Tell us a life lesson you learned, ask a question for the podcast, or give us a story of pushing yourself outside the comfort zone. Do one of those things, and let's collaborate together. Let's build our community by sharing these things, becoming examples for others. Thanks for listening. Make sure that you stream and subscribe. Leave a comment, leave a review. I would appreciate reviews. Don't have very many reviews on the podcast platforms. I would appreciate that very much. Make sure you get your swag. Starting with Hustle, Entrepreneur AF, Coffee and Donuts. Get all of your swag. Follow on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and don't forget the Facebook fan page. All the information, every past episode, all the swag, everything is at SaturdayMorningHustle.com. It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means. The Saturday Morning Hustle's for anyone willing to come in early, stay late, or work on the weekends to earn that thing that they want the most. Till next week, good luck.
Saturday Morning Hustle. Saturday Morning Hustle. Saturday Morning Hustle. Wake up and keep chasing.